Hello friends, today I'm going to introduce the read aloud for today, which is going to be chapter 2 of our story, The Wind in the Willows. Now chapter 2 is called The Riverbank. So we're going to start by introducing some objectives, and then we're going to kind of get started on introducing the read aloud. All right, here we go. So this is Unit 1, Lesson 2, and it is also Chapter 2 of our story, The Wind in the Willows, and the chapter is called The Riverbank, Part 2. So let's go over some objectives for today. So today you will know characters' thoughts, actions, and feelings, major and minor characters. You will understand the character's perspective, and you will be able to use the details to rewrite a scene from the story from another perspective. And friends, we are going to talk about perspective, so if you don't know exactly what perspective is right now, that's okay. We are going to talk about it. So we're going to first start with introducing the vocabulary, and then we're going to introduce the read aloud and some questions, and then we're going to talk a little bit about perspective. And then we're going to do our word of the day, which is dejected. So here's our first vocabulary word: arranged, ordered, or organized specifically. Arrange, arranges, or arranging are different forms of the word. But if you look at these pictures, you can see that things are arranged nice and neatly, and that is a visual representation of arranged. Escorted, it means led or accompanied. Now you can see the little girl is being escorted by, looks like 4 men. So escorted. Seized. Seized means grabbed or took hold of suddenly. So if you quickly take something from someone, that is seized. You seized it from them. Stability, the condition of being firm or not likely to move or change. So if you had lived in the same house for a long time, or if you know someone who's had a car for a really long time, if it is firm and it's not likely to move or change, or let's say this castle that we're looking at, this castle has probably been around for hundreds of years, literally hundreds of years. That castle is stable. It has lots of stability. It is not going to move or change. Today's word. Haha, can you say that fast? Today's word is dejected. So dejected means feeling sad or depressed. Feeling sad or depressed. That's what dejected means. So when all was ready to begin again, the mole, limp and dejected, took his seat in the stern of the boat. That's an example of dejected from our story, right? So that means that Mole was feeling a little sad, a little depressed. The bottom corner of the screen, you can see another example of someone feeling dejected. So it says, I felt dejected once when, right? We're not going to be able to share a time when we felt dejected, but, move too fast. But a time when I felt dejected or sad was when, I lost something that was important to me, and I felt super sad about losing something that was important to me, and I felt so dejected, right? Or my daughter felt dejected once when she got a bad grade on a test. She got a B, and she's used to getting A's. So she felt dejected when she got a B on a test. So that was a feeling of sadness for her. So remember, dejected is feeling sad or depressed. All right, so let's get into some of our story elements from yesterday. So yesterday we talked about characters, setting, and plot. So remember, characters are basically who the people are in the story. Remember, we talked about major and minor characters. Remember that? Right. So our story starts off with a major character because remember, a major character is a character throughout the entire story. You cannot have a story without the major character. Remember your favorite story, your favorite movie that you watched? Would your favorite movie be the same if you didn't have that major character? No. My favorite movie, Harry Potter, would it be the same if Harry Potter wasn't in the movie? Absolutely not. They couldn't even name it Harry Potter if Harry Potter wasn't in the movie. So, remember we have major characters and minor characters. Setting is when and where the story takes place. When and where. So the when could be at night, during the day, and the where could be the garden or the house or the pond, right? So remember, your setting is always when and where the story takes place. Now, sometimes you're going to run into a setting where it just says long ago in a place nobody's ever seen, right? So your setting, your when is long ago, and your where is a place nobody's ever seen. So sometimes the setting won't be super specific like a house or a garden, and you're going to have to determine what the setting is. We also have plot. Plot is very simply what happens. It's the problem and the solution. It's the beginning, middle, and end. That is the plot. The events that unfold in the story. That is the plot. Perspective. So let's talk a little bit about perspective, because you know that you're going to have to rewrite a scene from the story from Rat's perspective, from Water Rat's perspective. That's one of your assignments. So what does that mean for us, right? So what I want you to know is that our story begins from Mole's perspective. Mole is telling us his perspective of the river. When the story starts off, we do not get anyone else's perspective but Mole's. But what is perspective? It is how someone sees or experiences something. So it's how someone sees something. How do you see it, right? If we're looking, let's look at this picture here that's up on the screen. So we see an elephant, right? I see an elephant. But someone is looking at the tail and right here, and they see a rope. It's a rope. Or somebody's looking at the huge body of the elephant and they say it's a wall. Somebody else is looking at the elephant's tusks and they say it's a spear. And someone else is looking at the elephant's trunk and they say it's a snake. And then we have someone else looking at the elephant's legs and they say it's a tree. And someone else looking at the elephant's ears and they say it's a fan. It's all about perspective. How do you see it? If you look out your window right now, outside, everybody's looking outside. I'm looking outside right now. And even though we're all looking outside, we all see something different. When I look outside, I see a street, I see trees, I see cars. That's what I see when I look outside. When someone else looks outside, they might see a basketball court. If someone else looks outside, they might see a swimming pool. They might see tennis courts. They could see maybe a gas station or a corner store. So it all just depends on your perspective. So remember, Mole, when we start our story, the very first chapter, it begins from Mole's perspective. So perspective is just another literary tool that an author uses, right? And just like dialogue, perspective can shift from one character to another as a way of telling more about the story. But what does that mean for us? That means even though we start the story from Mole's perspective, it can change to Water Rat's perspective, or it could change to Otter's perspective, or whoever those characters are in the story. So just because it starts off from one character's perspective doesn't mean it can't change, right? You remember we talked about changing settings. Remember, the setting can change. Just like the setting can change in a story, so can the perspective change. So let's take a look. Here's an example of perspective. If you look at the picture on the ground, it looks like a 6 to one person and a 9 to another person, right? They say 6, they say 9. This person says 6, this person says 9. But it just depends on your perspective. One person is looking at it from one side and one person is looking at it from another side. Remember, it's really the same number, but it just depends on how you look at it. So you are going to have to rewrite a scene from Water Rat's perspective, any scene you want. So I gave you a sentence starter, and then I gave you an example. So here we go. From Rat's perspective, I can tell, and then you tell me what do you know from Rat's perspective, because, and then tell me something else. You have to support what you told me. Here's your example. From Rat's perspective, I can tell that Mole was not as shy as I first thought because he seized the skulls from me while we were in the boat. Mole knew he did not know how to operate the boat, and we fell in the water. Right? What did I do? From Rat's perspective, I can tell that Mole was not as shy as I first thought. Right? This is from Rat's perspective. I can tell that Mole was not as shy as I first thought. Why? Because he seized the skulls from me while we were in the boat. Mole knew he did not know how to operate the boat, and we fell in the water. You are going to do something very similar to that. That's just an example. You can do something else. You can use the same scene, but you can make your story a little bit different. Your because can be different. You can say, from Rat's perspective, I can tell that Mole was not as shy as I thought. Well, you can give me another reason. That's just one. There are lots of reasons that you can use on why you think Mole was not as shy as you first thought. This, my friends, is an otter. So Otter is another character in the story, right? And you're going to also get some perspective from Otter as well. So just so you can know a little bit more about the new character Otter that's coming up. Adult otters are 25 to 35 inches in length, not including their tail, and their tail can be another 14 to 18 inches long. Otters live in and around water. Otters are semi-aquatic, meaning they spend time in and out of the water, just like water rats. They live in burrows, just like moles, that they dig into riverbanks or in hollowed out trees near rivers, streams, or ponds. So otters, water rats, they are always near water. Otters eat fish, shellfish, birds, insects, and frogs. And otters have a backbone. Their skeleton is inside the body. They're warm-blooded mammals. Their babies are born alive, and the mother feeds them milk from their own bodies. So that's an otter. So our read aloud. So let's review. What are the names of the major characters in the story so far, right? We have Mole and Water Rat. Right now, after only reading chapter 1, those are the only characters we have. They kind of gave us a little bit glimpse of Otter and a little bit of Badger, but they didn't play a major part in what we were reading, but don't worry, they will. And the plot in chapter 1 basically is what happened is Mole was spring cleaning his house. He bolted outside and he soon met Water Rat, and then they began on an adventure. Okay. Personification, we talked about that. Personification is giving human traits to non-human things. So an example of personification is when Mole and Water Rat talk. Remember, animals can't talk. So animals don't talk, they don't wear clothes, they don't go on picnics, they don't carry luncheon baskets. So remember, all those are examples of personification, and I know you can find many, many more examples of personification within the story. So remember, after the last read aloud, Rat and Mole were getting ready to go to picnic on the backwater. So they're getting ready they picked on the backwater. Remember, they tipped over and they splashed in the water because Mole seized the skulls from Water Rat. And then Water Rat invited Mole to his house so that he could relax. And that's when they start to build their friendship. Right? So Mole went to sleep and he was comfortable. And now we're going to read chapter 2 so that we can find out what's going to happen with Mole and Water Rat's relationship. What other characters are we going to meet? When are we going to learn some different things about Otter? And when are we going to learn some different things about Badger, which is one of the other characters that we met in chapter 1? So this is the end of our introduction, and I want you to go and listen to chapter 2 of The Wind in the Willows, and then you will have some discussion questions to answer.